Hello and welcome to Youth Culture. This is session 8. In this session, I want to talk a little bit about social media and sexting. This is kind of a popular term in recent years, and we want to talk about how social media and all these various forms of interacting with one another involves sex and sexuality, all right? So I think that most people would agree that we live in a sex-saturated society, that at any given moment our students are exposed to a variety of sexual messages. And certainly we want to address it. And youth ministry has traditionally been the time in life, in church life, where we address sexual topics. And it makes sense, right? Because of our students are maturing, and they're maturing sexually, and so it makes sense that we would want to address it. And in this session, I want to talk mostly about social media apps like Snapchat, and then texting or sexting, where students would be texting provocative images, sexually explicit images to one another, all right? I know that, of course, we're maybe familiar with abstinence initiatives like True Love Waits, and I would encourage you to be involved in those and talk about abstinence to your students. But also we want to guard against taking ownership of talking about sexuality and somehow leaving our parents out of the conversation. I think we want to make sure that we invite and encourage our parents to have those conversations with their students, because that's going to be the most powerful. You and I are going to be wanting to address sexual topics and issues within the context of our youth group, and I think that's appropriate. But most effective is when you can encourage parents to have those conversations with their students. And so the first advice that the first thing I want to talk and encourage you to do in this issue, in this area of sexuality and social media, is to have those conversations with parents and be a resource. Provide resources for your parents to help them have conversations. Many times we have the tendency to think in terms of, and our parents have this view that we're going to hand those issues off to the church, and we're going to let the church address those issues. And parents sort of abdicate that role and want to turn that over to a youth leader or a church in some way. But we want to hand that back to parents and say, listen, it's more effective coming from you, and let me be a resource. There's a couple of ways you can be a resource. The first thing is you can make parents aware of social media apps like Snapchat. Your parents may not be as familiar with some of the things that are popular among youth culture, and you can be a resource by just simply providing information about that. You can send text messages, an email, provide a forum of discussion, maybe on a Sunday afternoon, for parents to come and hear a little bit more about a certain issue. Maybe it's about how to make your parents more aware of how to provide monitor or blocking of Wi-Fi in some way. Maybe you can put filters on your Wi-Fi at home, or how to monitor or put filters on a smartphone, all right? So it'd be another way that you could be a resource. And then another one would be to show and provide a smartphone use agreement for teenagers. So maybe parents are concerned about the things that their teenagers might be doing with their smartphones, and you can provide a list of maybe 10 things that the students are not allowed to do, or they're going to make this agreement with parents and about smartphone use, times of day they're using their smartphone, the things that they will text and they won't text, the types of images that they'll send and they won't send, those types of things. These are ways that you can provide these resources to parents so that they're making the decision and they're having those conversations with their student. Another is that you would have and be teaching about God's standards of sexuality with students, that you would have those talks with students, that you would at least once a year, annually, have a series of messages in which you would specifically address God's sexual standards with students. And then the third thing, the final thing, is that I would challenge you to have abstinence pledges with your students, that you would talk about abstinence with students, and that you would maybe each year annually have a day in which you encourage students to make a pledge towards sexual abstinence. So these are some ways that I would encourage you to address these issues of sexuality and social media and texting, sexting, all these issues with students. Make sure you're posting to Discussion Board 6 this week, and it's in this discussion board that I'll be asking you to interact and discuss these issues with your classmates. All right, that's all I've got for you this week. Have a great week, and I'll see you next time.